Hey guys, this is Joe Whitcomb here with Reboot Your Relationship, and I'm really excited to be talking again today. I've been kind of off the grid for a minute here, just getting back into the groove of being back down here in San Diego. I've been up in San Francisco and Orange County for off and on for the last 6 months, so we're just getting our bearings. So we're gonna base jump today into some really important work that I've been based on the emails and requests and comments and suggestions people have been getting is that when we get caught up in a vicious cycle, right? How do we take a timeout, right? Time is, and in the past, when we think of a timeout, they used to just say, hold your breath for 10 seconds, or till you turn blue or pass out, and then try again. And a lot of those strategies may work for a brief second, but it doesn't really create a shift, a corrective emotional experience. And so what we're going to be talking about today is just how to get beyond that. But first, we got to understand when we are triggered, and what's bringing all this up for us is that when we think about it, if you've ever feel triggered and you get stuck in this reactive tailspin, despite all your efforts, right? Everything you're doing, you're trying to, calm yourself, self-regulate, do all that stuff that you normally try to do when you're triggered. But what happens here is it is from this place, this hooked feeling, that we find ourselves responding in less than ideal ways, right? So these are the moments when we may speak out with venom, act out, or completely shut down, or disengage, stonewall, silent treatment, get louder, especially when, you're faced with challenging situations, right? All that stuff goes on within and between you and your partner, right? That stance, that vicious cycle that we keep talking about. Because it's only later that you begin to have the opportunity to really calm down and reflect on your actions and your responses. And then we wonder where we went wrong and how we could have chosen a more grounded response, right? So this next 25 minutes here, we're going to kind of focus on learning that we have the power and freedom to choose something different. And we're going to examine and illuminate some of these nebulous processes so we can break it down step by step, kind of like when you watch a football game, you got to slow it down, do the play-by-play, slow motion, so that you can follow these steps. And I've been doing a lot of research on this because it's important that we do have some strategies. So if you have a pen, paper, if you're not driving, write this stuff down, and we can get this downloaded so you have some clear strategies. But here's where we're going to be clearly identifying where and when you have the opportunity to change some of these habitual response patterns and to choose something different. So this is one of, again, the principles and practices of our Reboot Your Relationship. And I should say, this is Joe Whitcomb with Reboot Your Relationship with another episode, because here we are again talking about how do we move beyond X, right? How do we move beyond and beyond chemistry, beyond all these things that can get us into a real disillusionment in your conflicts of confusion and pain and frustration and detachment and all that bewilderment that can go on when you're triggered in those moments. But we're going to walk you through this landscape in these really deep emotional and internal thunderstorms and be able to guide you through so you have the tools to cultivate the inner freedom and peace. Again, reminding yourself of my mantra that we have the power and freedom to choose something different in any moment, right? But first we got to understand, what does it look like to be hooked? I mean, what's that? I mean, when you're getting hooked, you're just, because maybe you get triggered by something like, let's say a friend says something about, your new shirt or your dress, and it was kind of a put down, or the dinner you just cooked and people weren't very happy or grateful for what they were eating. Or maybe it's a look or a glance, from a stranger, or somebody in a car drives, and pulls out in front of you, right? But something happens, right? Something that is about to set you off, right? So you have something that happens, whatever that trigger is, and then you have that story. You're interpreting and translating that story and projecting all your story, adding and subtracting meaning to that story, right? And all that stuff's going on. And then you're looking for evidence to support that story. And then you're in a vicious cycle. You're hooked. You're just hooked. So then what happens? So now that you got that down, right, you've kind of figured out, okay, something's going on. You're stopped, think, observe, process, suspend judgment. But the first thing you notice is when you're getting hooked, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Right? Your jaw or your stomach gets tight, right? And then your irritation, frustration, anger begins to rise out of nowhere. It's just boom, right there. Time speeds up. You get these, what do you call it, blinders on, and the mind begins to race. And you go into the low road, and thoughts about the offending action begin to flood your head. And these judgments and defenses and accusations and blame, and blame becomes the name of the game. And whatever you call it here, this is what we're going to call it. This is where you're hooked and your amygdala hijacked. That's a Dan Siegel, Goldman. Also, I think Daniel Goldman and the emotional intelligence talks about getting amygdala hijacked. But how do we choose something different in that moment? And here's where we can really develop a subtle, this awareness, presence, being present and aware and attuned, and notice what you're noticing for what it actually feels like to be hooked. Okay. Learn how to recognize the feeling when it first arises and catch it quicker. You're catching the bullet, catching it. Like I'll tell you, for me, that somatic body experience I have when I'm triggered, it usually starts right here in my chest. It gets really red hot. It's like a dragon. And these lava going through my arms, my legs, and I can feel it. That's my first. That alarm has got to go off and saying, danger, danger, danger. Something's happening. And I have to pay attention and notice. Otherwise, the next thing's going to happen. The dragon comes out, and it's going down over my head and coming out of my mouth, and all this venom and lava, just hot stuff, and it's just pouring over everybody. Right. So in those moments, we got to learn how to quarantine, and keep the good stuff in and the bad stuff out. So we can learn how to have, and catch that quicker. So we can interrupt the momentum of some of these habitual responses by slowing down our reactions and noticing what you're doing and what you're noticing internally, so all that can begin to shift, right? So, and then here's where we're going to go next, is establishing some alternative forms of responding that's going to come from an expansive sense of your own self-worth and value, and rather than this really constricted place of self-preservation, self-protection, feeling safe. And we do need to feel safe, but we can do it in a way that it's not just good for you, it's good for your partner, it's good for everybody. So to get the support that you need to reinforce this change and make it a new active part of your life, and you're going to have to practice this maybe 20 times so you have these corrective emotional experiences, and we're going to get into it so you can try to do that. So let me ask you guys, are you ready to get unhooked? Are you ready? So this is going to be some steps on how do we get to some of these underlying emotions within ourselves, and some tools needed to cultivate some true inner freedom in your relationships, not just within you, but we're also talking about your partner and that space between, right? That space between is that we-ness, right? The connection. And that's where we're going to talk about that. So what do we do with timeouts? How are timeouts to be used? So when your nervous system is going into that fight, flight, freeze, right? Your brain, the amygdala hijacks, your body is now activated into fight. I'm going to, fight, or flee, or I shut down. And these are all strategies that we learned, as children, how to cope with when that dragon or that bear is in the room. What do you do, right? So here's the nervous system goes into this negative feedback loop, and it goes into this circuitry of fear and anger. So the timeout is going to be like a circuit breaker. A timeout is a rip stop. It's the cord you pull to stop a runaway train. It's the brake, the thing that you use to halt, stop an interaction that either has crossed over into or is quickly beginning to cross over into a haywire or some other dysfunction into this vicious cycle. So timeouts have one job only, guys, and that one job only is to stop the abruptly a psychologically violent and unconstructive interaction between you and your partner, the mutual injury that is occurring in that moment, so you can stop hurting and bleeding. And it's kind of getting out of that hurt for hurt, harm for harm, injury for injury, eye for eye, tooth for tooth type of pattern, the complain, defend pattern. And you're both running the planet, so you can stop that vicious cycle in its tracks, right? Now, this is going to be hard to do the first time. Put these brakes on, you're going to practice this. And this is going to be helpful, and it's going to feel frustrating at first, but you're going to start noticing that you can have a softer startup to enter or land the plane or bring the boat back to shore. Okay, so, but here's what we do once we feel like we're getting triggered. We're going to take your time out from the I, me, myself, I, right? Calling for a timeout has everything to do with me, my I, and nothing to do with you. It's not about putting your partner in timeout, put him in the corner. We're taking it for ourselves. Calling a timeout means that I don't like how I'm feeling, right? I can't tell you what to do. You're a free person. But I can tell you, I need to tell you what I need to do, and I need to go regulate right now. I need to go, and what I'm about to do, I don't like what I'm feeling, and I don't like what I'm about to say or do or whatever. So whether or not you think you have the problem with how you're behaving or how it's going between you, that space between you, it's strictly your business. And you have to take that distance responsibly. And that's going to be really super important. So timeouts are obviously a form of distance taking. And like all form of distance taking, there are two ways to do it. And I always say there's two ways. There's the relational, when we take it a relational silence, there's two ways. One is for the health and vitality and to preserve the relationship, right? When you're leaning in, you're doing it for that healthy reason. The other one, the silent treatment, those types of things are actually harmful, and that type of silent treatment can be is kind of abuse in some ways, or even violence to the relationship when you're taking a time out and you're not following through and you're using passive aggressive anger to withhold love, to punish your person. That's actually violence, and that's actually abuse, okay, by withholding. And that's important. So these types of distance taking, there are two ways to do it. First is you can either do it provocatively or responsibly. So the responsible distance taking has two pieces to it. One, we have to give an explanation, okay? And two, it's the promise that you're going to return. And this is why and by saying this is why I'm seeking distance. By contrast, exactly, as neither you just take the choice to distance yourself without an explanation or taking care of your partner's anxieties or fears about your leaving, and it will trigger each of your abandonment, whoever's calling it, these abandonment issues, and you're going to get triggered into that and possibly frustrated, and and there's going to be a pursuing, but you're going to have to learn to process that and slow it down. Slower is faster, the play by play. So I also speak about the provocative distance taking as an incomplete distance taking, since it tends to get you chased, right? It doesn't close the loop. It keeps the nervous system open. It keeps everything in that fear. It's like the high tide, low tide, rip tides, right? When the tide's there, feeling good. When the rip tides or the low tides come, and you're leaving your partner in terror and wondering if you're ever going to come back, right? That we want to be able to create a safe, secure base so that there's more certainty about that, and we're not using that as a way to punish or withhold love or use passive aggressive things that we grew up with our parents and how they would punish us. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to be secure functioning adults, right? Being a secure functioning adult is you're still showing care and staying connected through the conflict, even though it's hurtful sometimes. But again, we want to get out of the hurt, and we want to make sure we're just staying in the hurt and pain, not making the hurt harm or the pain suffering. It is going to take a little bit of pain and hurt. That's normal, but we got to move through this in a way. So how do you get there? So the first thing is you got to use the phrase time out, or the T sign as an abbreviation, or whatever your safety word is. It could be pineapple, or make it playful, fun. It could be banana split. It could be, I don't know, whatever you want to make it. But that's your timeout, and you can make it playful. But it's something you're both going to agree on. All right. So when you hit that circuit breaker, you tap out, you're saying, because it's often said that when there are times when if you open your mouth to speak, demons are going to fly out, right? So sometimes talking is the most dangerous thing you can be doing. And then that's kind of how it goes, right? So that's going to be something that we have to talk about. You may feel like you may not have any control over that. So what is always under your control is the ability to turn, heal and leave, to set the boundary, set the limit, and begin to leave. So the phrase timeout, or that T sign, there is, and then you have the following phrase, because you want to make sure that you're giving some reassurance, even though it's painful and you're hurting right now, you're in pain. You're saying something like this, either like, honey, no matter how you may be feeling or assessing things right now, I don't like how I'm doing. And we're taking personal responsibility for that choice. And I don't trust what I'm about to do. That's authentic. That's real. That's true. And you're trying to protect not just you or the person, but the relationship. So I'm taking some time now to regain my composure, and I'll get back to you when I do. Okay. And you want to be able to do that immediately. So don't let yourself get stopped. Timeouts are really unilateral. They are your last ditch effort to avoid these immature words or more pain and harm, or other actions that could be coming up from you guys as you get into these. Your patterns, what you do. I don't have to tell you how you do your little negative, your fear dance, your pain dance, your shame dance, whatever dance, that stance that you get into, what it is. And we're trying to stop so you can reassess and come back to it. So again, timeouts are unilateral. They are your last ditch effort to avoid immature words, right? Actions, unlike virtually other couples tools that out there, timeouts, a timeout is a non-negotiable, right? It's a declaration. I'm stopping, I'm leaving. You're not asking for permission, and you cannot allow yourself to be stopped. Okay, don't call a timeout and stand there and keep talking or texting. I see this all the time. Time out, and they keep talking and they keep texting. Stop, drop, and roll with it. Okay, just leave the room, go to another bedroom, or for example, or close the door. That's really important. If you need a house, you leave the house. Make sure you're saying like, "Hey, where you're going and when you're going to be back." Okay, that's all you have to say. But here's the thing: sometimes your partner may get triggered into some abandonment fear and try to chase you down, and your partner won't leave you alone, and that keeps going, and they won't let you leave the house. Okay, with or without the kids, this is your call. You can leave, but you got to go down the block for a cup of coffee, relax. If your partner physically blocks you from leaving, you can call the police. I've done that before, and have them come to assist you, right? I've had people do that, and it's not to, get the other person in jail or prison. That's not what this is about. It's about really taking your timeouts and your safety and protection seriously. As I've really met a couple, where the police have been, called more than once, right? But you want to use these check-ins, as when you get into this stuff, you want to do a check-in and not, again, using the timeouts to punish or to withhold love or to make the other person wrong. This is about you rather calming things down, self-regulating, getting your nervous system back into good. And, and it's critical, that you check in with your partner from time to time in order to take the emotional temperature between you. Okay. Because right now, you're trying to get the thermostat is set at 70. If you're running hot, you're at 90. You're thinking you're going to get to 70 at 90, and your partner's running at 40, trying to get to 70. You got to both kind of either warm up or cool down to get back to 70. It feels intuitive to go hot or cold, but that's not actually working. It's actually working against you, because we want to be able to, instead of working against the resolution, repair, and reconciliation, we want to be working towards the resolution, restoration, repair, and reconciliation. And these are the steps that you're both making agreements on in your couple bubble, so we can get out of that whole amygdala hijacking scenario that you get into that kind of puts you into that crazy making mode. Okay, so here's the thing. You want to do some intervals, and I suggest these because it takes a while for all that cortisol and adrenaline and all those chemicals in your brain to kind of, it takes about 60 to 90 minutes. So take a, check in, intervals I suggest are like an hour or 3 hours or a half a day or a whole night or overnight. So check-ins can be done in person, although cooler media might be advised, like you might want to text it or by phone. But again, you got to communicate and remember your goal here. Timeouts are about one thing, and that's protecting your relationship and stopping it in its tracks, any emotionally violent or immature, destructive behavior. And by stopping these behaviors in your relationship, it is a goal that supersedes all other goals. Okay, you may need to work on better communication or sharing or negotiation, getting out of those power struggles or one up and one down, the drama triangle of the rescuer, perpetrator, and the one down, the victim, which you're both going down very quickly. But none of that's going to happen until you succeed in wrestling the beast of nasty transactions to the ground, and you name and tame those dragons, and you slay it. You got to slay your own first. You can't make your partner responsible for your emotions, your feelings. So whatever point you want to make here, whatever the content of the issue, nothing matters more than ending these sort of transactions. So keep your priorities right and straight. Nothing takes precedence over a timeout. The timeout takes control precedence over anything. And then the last thing is you want to return with good faith. When you're ready to end a timeout, when you and your partner are both reseated enough in your adult selves, in your secure functioning selves, and you've regulated to have the positive interaction again, that means you both need to come in. Don't return with a grudge or chip on your shoulder, or you'll just start winding up with that again. It's just going to be another vicious cycle. Come back when you're ready and truly ready to make peace, as far as it depends on you to make the peace. As far as it depends on you, okay, run to the rescue, love and peace will follow, right? Run to the rescue of this weakness with love, and peace will follow. And again, you can also use a 24-hour moratorium on triggering topics. Like when you come back, don't talk about the hot spots or the raw spots, okay? Don't try to re-engage and try to reprocess or process what just happened. Don't do it. Bad idea. Okay, where there's misery, make a rule. That's one thing I would say. Where there's misery, make a rule. The rule is we don't talk about the hot stuff that we just came out of, right? Like kids, sex, money, always triggers a nasty transaction. and take that as a signal that you need some outside support in order to have that conversation constructively. Someone that's going to be objective and not choose sides. It's going to be on the side of the relationship. Go to a therapist, come to me, go to, some professional for help, or even a minister, because if you find that heated, unhelpful health, all this stuff is going on, transaction occurs enough regularly, and that you're frequently kind of resorting to these timeouts, take that as a signal, an alert, an alarm that you and your partner need some ongoing couple work, and to develop that certain couple bubble, which we'll talk about couple bubbles in these agreements, again, because this is an agreement you're both making. Okay, in your couple bubble, because expectations without consent or agreement creates resentment. So this is something you're both agreeing to. Find your safety word, find your timeout word, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be this, but find something maybe playful that you can kind of bring in. All right, thanks again. This is Joe Whitcomb with Reboot Your Relationship. You can give me a call anytime, 310-560-0726. Make this your best day ever. Bye-bye.